Hello friends, welcome to Pediatrics Made Easy by Dr. Mayank Pauja. Today we are here to discuss chronic disease known as cystic fibrosis. So we'll be discussing this cystic fibrosis into following headings: introduction, genetics, pathogenesis, clinical manifestations, diagnosis and assessment, treatment and prognosis. So coming on to the introduction part, yes, coming on to the introduction, cystic fibrosis is basically an autosomal recessive disorder. Okay, and from the name itself, it's clear cystic plus fibrosis. So there is formation of various cystic swellings and there is fibrosis. Fibrosis means hardening of tissue. So next, it is the defect in the CFTR gene. What is cystic fibrosis gene? That is CFTR gene, that is cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator. What is its function? Basically its function is to formation of CFTR protein, and function of CFTR protein is basically chloride transport. So there is defect in CFTR gene and there is no expression. Okay, there is no expression of the CFTR gene, so there's no CFTR protein, or there is defective CFTR protein and there is defect in chloride transport. It is more common in Caucasians and European population, but by advancement of the investigations, advanced tests we are doing here, we are able to diagnose cystic fibrosis in India as well. Because in US, many of the Indian parents are having cystic fibrosis diagnosed in their babies. So it's not like that it's not present in India. So it was the advancement in the tests, okay, lab diagnosis, so we can able to diagnose cystic fibrosis. So basically cystic fibrosis has a large number of gene mutations, CFTR gene. So more than 1800, okay, more than 1800 mutations have been seen in CFTR gene. So it is not easy to diagnose that cystic fibrosis because there are large number of gene mutations. Basically this delta F508. This delta F508 is the most common mutation being found in cystic fibrosis patients. This delta F508, now I'll be telling this delta means deletion, F stands for phenylalanine, and 508 is the 508 amino acid of this gene. So basically delta F508 is found in more than 60 to 70% of the patient mutation. This mutation is the most common mutation. So many centers are doing this single mutation as test, and many centers are doing, they are doing more than 1400 mutation checking of this 1400. So it's not that easy to diagnose cystic fibrosis. But as soon as we come to the lab diagnosis and the investigation part, we'll come to know there are many other tests to know that. Okay. Now, coming on to the genetics, it is autosomal recessive disorder. This is very most commonly asked questions in NEET PG and other competitive exams in FMG, that it is a autosomal recessive disorder. So what does autosomal recessive disorder means? We have a carrier father and we have a carrier mother. Okay, we have a carrier father and carrier mother. It means they are having single gene of cystic fibrosis. Both of them are each are having single gene of cystic fibrosis. So to get, there are chances, how many chances are there? This also comes as question, how many chances are there this child will be affected? So it is 25% chances, and 25% chances there are that child will be healthy, and there are 50% chance that child will be having career state. Okay, career state people don't have any disease, and the affected child, there are only 25 or 1 in 4 weekends, 25% chances basically that the child will be affected. So this is basically what is autosomal recessive means. So this is autosomal recessive disorder. This comes as a question that cystic fibrosis gene inheritance is autosomal recessive. Coming on to the mutations we'll be discussing. I told you that CFTR is the most common mutation. Okay, so what is happening here? We are having 5 classes of mutations. Now this CFTR gene is located first of all on chromosome number 7. Okay, this CFTR gene is located on chromosome number 7. First thing, we have 5 classes of mutations. First class, possibilities are that we can have mutations, we can have defective, we can have inactive CFTR, we can have less amount of CFTR protein, we can have delta F508 mutation, or we can have total absence of CFTR protein. So here in this picture, we have first, we have this absence, then we have this delta F08 mutation. See, F508 deletion is mentioned to delta F508. This comes as question, which is the most common mutation. It is delta F508. So this delta stands for deletion again. F is for phenylalanine and 508 is 508 place of amino acids. Next, this we have now 3, 4 and 5 categories. In third category, there is inactive CFTR. Okay, so here lies the role of Golgi apparatus. We have studied in our junior classes that Golgi apparatus has a formation of packaging the proteins and synthesis. So what is these ribosomes are synthesizing the proteins, the CFTR proteins. So if defect lies here, there will be total absence of this CFTR. If defect lies here, it can be idle delta F508 mutation, that is deletion, that is the absence. And if there is defective, class 4 is defective, it will be improper CFTR which will not be functioning properly. Some amount of function can be there. Okay, so inactive CFTR and we have less CFTR. So depending on which class of mutation a patient is having, it is totally dependent on the mutation studies. We can know from there. So from this slide, we can know that patient can have variety of presentations. Some patient may have mild symptoms, some patient have large number of symptoms, some patient can be totally asymptomatic depending on which mutation has occurred. Next is the pathogenesis. This pathogenesis is very important to understand both point of view for treating as well as for the competitive point of view. Coming on to it affects the sweat gland and other body parts. We'll be discussing the pathogenesis of the sweat gland first. So basically I'll be drawing here. So we have a sweat gland like this. Okay, this is normal sweat gland, and this is CFTR, cystic fibrosis sweat gland. So in this sweat gland, normal sweat gland, what is there? There are cells, sweat gland cells. Okay, what is happening for the synthesis of sweat? They are releasing sodium, they are releasing potassium, and they are releasing water. Okay, now what happens normally? Okay, what happens normally? This sodium, this water, and this potassium gets inside, and there is chloride also. Potassium is very less in amount. Majorly, it is sodium, sodium, chloride, and water. So what happens? This sodium, chloride, normally what happens? There is entry of reabsorption of sodium, chloride, and water. So the sweat hair forms is isotonic, because all the ions, that is the sodium, that chloride and water, are get reabsorbed inside this adjacent cell sweat gland cell, and the sweat comes out from this sweat duct. So this is happening, this is the formation of sweat. Okay, I can now, this is cystic fibrosis sweat gland. What is happening here? This synthesis of sweat is same. Sodium is coming out, chloride is coming out, and water is coming out. So this is synthesis of sweat, right? But what is that? Here there is CFTR protein. Okay, here there is CFTR protein. This CFTR protein only allows the reabsorption of sodium, chloride, and other ions to make this sweat isotonic. Okay, so what is happening here? This CFTR is mutated. There is problem in this CFTR protein. Okay, this CFTR protein is abnormal here. So this sodium, this chloride will not be going inside. It will not be, there is no reabsorption of chloride, because CFTR has main function in role of chloride transport. So this is this CFTR is abnormal. Chloride is not getting inside, right? Chloride is not getting inside. Chloride is, all the ions are now here in the sweat. This sweat is hypertonic. Okay, as soon as we move ahead in pathogenesis, we'll come to know. So this is hypertonic sweat which is coming out. Now, what is this importance here? These ducts of sweat glands. Okay, ducts of sweat glands are not obstructed. So this also comes as question. Are all gland ducts obstructed in cystic fibrosis? So pathogenesis in lungs and other glands and other organs is different, but it is different in sweat gland. So ducts of this sweat glands are not obstructed. Fine. So this comes as question, because sweat is able to come and there is hypertonic sweat. So this sweat is rich in chloride. So mother complains, mother brings baby, and they see, when they kiss the baby, and they think that it is salty sweat. So mothers come with this complaint, when I kiss my baby, I get a salty taste. Okay, so this can be presentation by a mother that his or her sweat is salty. Next, this was the pathogenesis in sweat gland. The normal, there is sodium, chloride, and movement of sodium and chloride and water outside this sweat gland cell. And again, there is reabsorption of this chloride inside by the adjacent sweat gland cell. And there is less of sodium, less of chloride, and less of water inside this isotonic. And this sweat is isotonic, which comes out from this sweat duct. But in cases of cystic fibrosis, the sweat gland formation is same, but the adjacent sweat gland cell, which is not having a proper functioning CFTR protein, whose function is chloride transport. Chloride is not getting inside, so there will be rich. It will be rich in this sweat will be rich in sodium and chloride. It will be coming out from the duct, and these ducts. Remember, these ducts are not obstructed. This comes as question. Okay, these ducts are not obstructed. Now, mother complains of salty sweat while kissing. Next, coming on to the pancreas. What is happening in pancreas? What is happening in pancreas? Okay, there is the pathogenesis totally different from sweat gland. In pancreas, there is thick secretions. Thick secretions. Okay. Why thick secretions? This chloride and sodium, these transport of this chloride and sodium is not going outside. Okay. So duct of this pancreatic duct that gets obstructed. This duct of pancreas get obstructed. The juices, the digestive enzymes are not able to go outside. There's decreased digestive enzymes in the body. So what can we expect? That a pancreas whose ducts are obstructed, so there are cystic swelling, from the name we can know cystic fibrosis. So there are cystic swelling, the acini get cystic swellings. So there are cystic swellings, there are thick secretions. These secretions which are not able to go outside, so the duct is obstructed. On the contrary, the ducts of the sweat glands were not obstructed. So there are thick mucus, decreased juices. The digestive enzymes are not able to go outside into the GIT tract. So the collection of enzymes here. So when enzymes are collected inside the pancreas, they cause autodigestion. So they are causing autodigestion and they cause acute and chronic pancreatitis. And later the endocrine part. This is the exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. What we mean by exocrine, that is pancreatic juice secretion, that is the enzyme secretion. Okay. So it is the pancreatic exocrine insufficiency which is causing which is causing acute and chronic pancreatitis. Later on, endocrine part of the pancreas also gets affected and leads to diabetes mellitus type 2. Okay. So next, how does patients present? Okay, pancreas is affected, sweat gland is affected. Sweat gland, I already told you that mother can complain of that while kissing, patient baby skin tastes salty. Now what happens? This is the GIT tract. Okay, this is the digestive enzymes are not coming. So fat is not digested and protein is not digested. No enzymes, no digestion. So there is food comes here, food is coming, goes outside. As such, there is no digestion of the fat, there is no digestion of the protein. So there is fat malabsorption. Next question, patients coming here will be having fat malabsorption and they will be having steatorrhea. So what is steatorrhea? Steatorrhea is passage of fat greasy stools. Okay, if you will get the stool examined, there will be a lot of fat globules in this because there is fat malabsorption, protein malabsorption. So you can get patients with fat malabsorption, steatorrhea and failure to thrive. So this is the presentation of cystic fibrosis in early life. You will be getting failure to thrive. Next, coming on to later in life, the lungs. So cystic fibrosis is most common cause, not most common, it is a cause of persistent or recurrent pneumonias. Fine. So what is happening here? Again, we have our lungs. These are bronchi. We have bronchioles then the alveoli. So what is happening inside the lungs? These are the airways. In airways, normally there is chloride synthesis and there is mucus and we have cilia for this. What is this cilia? These are finger-like projections. These are hair. Okay, this ciliary hair, what does this do? They remove the mucus normally, and in normal human beings they move this mucus out, they throw this mucus outside the airway tract, thereby limiting the infections and dislodgement of this mucus and dislodgement of the organisms who grow hair. So this mucociliary action is present in normal human beings. Now what happens in cystic fibrosis? In cystic fibrosis, due to CFTR gene mutation, there is abnormal CFTR protein, or there is abnormal absence of this CFTR protein. There is no chloride transport, less of water transport inside the airways. So more, everything is moving inside these cells. Sodium, excess of sodium, excess of chloride, what chloride is not moving out, and water. This secretions on this air inside the airway surface, they become thick because of less of water. They become thick and the loss of mucociliary action. The cilia, which are hair-like projection, which move like this and throws the mucus out and dislodges the bacteria also out. So there is no collection of mucus basically here. But in cystic fibrosis, because mucus is thick, improper mucociliary action, this mucus is not able to go outside, and there is thick mucus. There can be blockage, there can be increased lodgement of the bacteria. I will be telling about the organisms ahead. There will be many organisms. So patient will be having pneumonias, recurrent pneumonias. There will be airway blockage leading to bronchiectasis, bronchiolitis. Patient will be presenting like this, and ultimately having recurrent pneumonias. Patient will be having, can have respiratory failure also. So organisms responsible, again it is a question. So again here, the ducts are blocked here. In Switzerland, ducts were not blocked. I'm again telling, Switzerland's ducts are not blocked. The blockage of duct is present in all organs. Pancreatic duct was also obstructed. That's why there was cystic fibrosis, fibrotic changes, the autodigestion of the pancreas. So, and there was fat malabsorption. Now, in this also there is duct obstruction leading to thick mucus and blockage of this ducts, causing bronchiectasis and bronchiolitis, and dislodgement of the extra lodgement of the microorganisms. What is the most, next comes the question, what is the most common microorganism found here? So most common microorganism is Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is the aeruginosa. Pseudomonas aeruginosa is the most common organism found. Next is the Staph aureus. Next is this Pseudomonas is the most common. Next is the Staph aureus. All these are leading to pneumonia. And third is the Burkholderia cepacia. Burkholderia cepacia. This organism has importance. It has maximum mortalities associated with this organism. Okay, so most common organism is the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Now, as soon as we will be moving ahead, we'll come to know that infection in these cystic fibrosis patients is not easy to clear, because this Pseudomonas forms a protective lipid layer around them, due to which this mucociliary action is also not helping them out. The antibiotics which we give, they are not able to act properly on this lipid film. So there is lipid film formation around this Pseudomonas. They form a lipid, and this lipid film formation is more favorable when the mucus is thick. They form a lipid layer around them so that antibiotic is not able to act on them, and their patient have chronic pneumonias, they have persistent pneumonias, they have recurrent pneumonias, because as many number of times we'll be getting the sputum numb, we'll be seeing that Pseudomonas aeruginosa is not getting cleared. I have a patient of cystic fibrosis. What they tell, sir, iska to sputum hum culture karate hain, usme se infection theek hi nahi ho raha, antibiotic. So it is not that easy to clear. So we give chronic antibiotics in such patients to get clear of this sputum from Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Next, other body parts. What is the pathogenesis in vas deferens? What is happening in vas deferens? It is basically connecting the some testis to the urethra for this passage of semen. Okay, semen passage from testis to the urethra is duct, which is causing is vas deferens. So in cystic fibrosis patient, again there is duct blockage. So patient of cystic fibrosis can have azoospermia and infertility in later life. Okay. Now in nose, what we can get? We can get nasal polyps again due to blockage of ducts. And clubbing is important feature. We can get clubbing in patients of cystic fibrosis. So clinical manifestation we all have discussed. Now I already told you the sweat can be salt. Clinical features: sweat can be salty. How can newborn present? Newborn can present. This is GIT. No enzymes. Food not getting outside. There can be meconium ileus. So this is the most common presentation in infants or newborns. It also comes as question, what is the most common presentation in newborns or infants? They come as meconium ileus first. Okay, then all clinical features I have discussed till with the pathogenesis. Newborn, they have, first of all, they can have as fat malabsorption, meconium ileus. They can have steatorrhea, that is patients of cystic fibrosis, they present fatty, greasy stools. Next, they can have nasal polyps, they can have rectal prolapse, pneumonias. So in younger age group, they can have staph pneumonias. Later on, there is most common organism is Pseudomonas. I've already told you. They can present as intussusception. So basic pathology is blockage of the ducts, which is only not happening in sweat glands. So patient will present with malnutrition, hypoproteinemia, anemia, hyponatremia. Okay, and what is this acid-base disorder in cystic fibrosis? It is hyponatremic, hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. Okay. Later on, we can have in more than 12 years of patient, we can have azoospermia, we can have liver involvement. Okay, it has been seen some patients are present as portal hypertension also. So they can be diabetic, they can be having portal hypertension, diabetic because of the endocrine effect of these endocrine affection of the cystic fibrosis. So all these are the clinical features. So they can have GI presentation, they can have pneumonia, respiratory presentation, and they can have endocrine presentation also. Most likely is the GI presentation, as the other presentation is the respiratory presentation. Coming on to the diagnosis and assessment, in the newborn area, the screening can be done by this test, which is known as IRT, that is the immunoreactive trypsinogen. Okay, this is immunoreactive trypsinogen. It is for screening, right? Next is the sweat chloride test. What we are doing in sweat chloride test? We have already studied in the pathogenesis. Now it is not difficult for us that sweat is having high chloride levels, right? This is also one question, that there is high chloride levels in sweat. Okay, and we'll be telling what we are doing in sweat chloride. There is one agent known as pilocarpine. We all have studied what is pilocarpine in pharmacology. So with the help of electric current, this pilocarpine is being infused in the skin of the babies, preferably done in first 48 hours. We should ideally do it after first week of life because less number of sweat glands. So we induce this pilocarpine in the skin of patient with the help of electric current, and they stimulate the sweat glands and the formation of sweat. So we have an instrument there which detects the amount of chloride in those sweat. Chemical examination of sweat tells there are high chloride levels in sweat, and this high chloride should be more than 60. More than 60 milliequivalent per liter should be present, which is diagnostic of cystic fibrosis, and 40 to 60 is borderline, and less than 40 is there is no cystic fibrosis the possibility. So this is sweat chloride test have to be done twice on two different occasions, and a reading of more than 60 is diagnostic. If it is coming out to be borderline, we can repeat. Next, what we can do next is it is also, if the sweat chloride levels are borderline, we can do nasal potential difference measurement, which is done with the help of a substance known as amiloride, and there is increased difference, nasal potential difference, which is also diagnostic of cystic fibrosis. Next is the mutation studies. So this mutation study is basically dependent on the type of center who are doing these mutation studies. Some are doing around 1400, checking for 1400 mutations. Some are only looking for 100 mutations. So depends on the lab to lab and how able they are able to diagnose. So next is how do we approach to a case of CF. So we'll be learning how can we approach to a case of, we have a patient with clinical features of CF, that is recurrent pneumonias, okay, recurrent GI symptoms. So, and what we do, if sweat chloride is facilities available, we do that, sweat chloride. So if sweat chloride tests are not available, what we can do for sputum culture, we can go for electrolyte tests, okay, sputum culture, electrolyte test, ABG, and stool test. So if sputum culture is showing pseudomonas, patient is having recurrent pneumonias, okay, patient is of fat malabsorption, patient is coming to you as failure to thrive, and you take history that there is history of recurrent pneumonias. So what you do, there is no facility at your center for doing sweat chloride. In those cases, you get your sputum culture done, you get electrolytes level done, you get stool examination done. So if you are getting fat globules, okay, you are getting fat globules, you are getting in sputum culture, you are getting pseudomonas or staph aureus. In electrolyte, you are getting hyponatremia, hypokalemia, and in ABG, you are getting hyponatremic, hypochloremic, metabolic alkalosis, and that a patient already has features. So you cannot diagnose cystic fibrosis, but there is a term you can call those patients as cystic fibrosis suspect. Yes, you can do mutation studies also if they are present at your center or your city. So they are known as cystic fibrosis suspect, and you can treat them in the same way as you treat cystic fibrosis patient, confirmed cystic fibrosis patient. So next what we'll see, if you are having cystic, just now next is if you are having those cystic fibrosis sweat chloride test available. Okay, if you have a sweat chloride test available, what we'll do a sweat chloride levels values 40 to 60, more than 60. So this is confirmed case of cystic fibrosis. No need to think, you can straight away start the treatment. 40 to 60 is borderline. Remember, two sweat chloride levels should be done at a week, at least 2 weeks apart or something, on two different occasions. So it is borderline. and this is negative. You have to think of alternative diagnosis in such cases. So less chances of cystic fibrosis. So it is borderline, you repeat it. If it comes as more than 60, this is again cystic fibrosis, you can start treating it. If it's borderline, again it is coming between 40 to 60. Next, you can do nasal potential difference measurements. That also comes as question, that a patient comes to you with a history of malnutrition, a patient is having failure to thrive. There are 3 episodes of repeated admissions inside the PICU for pneumonia. Okay, next you can think sweat chloride levels are coming borderline. What will be the next line of investigation? So there will be options that you can do: repeat sweat chloride, there will be DNA analysis, mutation studies, or nasal potential. So answer will be nasal potential difference measurement will be the answer for that question. So you will be measuring that nasal potential difference and doing treatment along according to it. So this will be the approach to a case of cystic fibrosis. Next, coming on to the diagnostic criteria. So there is a diagnostic criteria for cystic fibrosis. What is that diagnosis? If the patient is having typical clinical features like GI manifestations or respiratory, or there is history of cystic fibrosis in sibling, and there is positive newborn screening test, that is IRT, I already told. Either one of these 3 conditions, plus there is lab evidence of 2 sweat chloride tests obtained on 2 separate occasions, that is more than 60, or there is identification of 2 CF mutation. So 2 CF mutation should be there, or there are 2 abnormal nasal potential difference measurements. So this is the diagnostic criteria. Either one of the 3 conditions plus one of this should be there. 1 plus 1 should be this. Okay, this is the diagnostic criteria for cystic fibrosis. Coming on to the treatment part, as such we don't have much to do in patients of cystic fibrosis. The prognosis is not that good. Majority maximum life expectancy is 35 to 40 years, and poor the life expectancy, earlier it is diagnosed or earlier the patient started having manifestations, poor is the life expectancy. But in abroad, there are being studies being done. Patients are able to survive till 47 years of age. So coming on to the treatment is chest physiotherapy. First of all, chest physiotherapy. Chest physiotherapy can be done in many ways. There is high frequency physiotherapy and clapping. Basic we can do with the ambu bag mask with a small in small children. So chest physiotherapy is basically to dislodge mucus. Okay, so there is lot of sputum production, lot of mucus. I've seen patients of cystic fibrosis, when they cough, the child keeps on coughing, and sputum comes in mouth, and they get it in they keep on collecting it. So next is this is for the chest physiotherapy, which has very important role to play. Next is the mucolytic agents. What are the mucolytic agents we can use? Mucolytic agents we can use is N-acetylcysteine. Okay, so this N-acetylcysteine, which is available in market as Mucinac. Okay, Mucinac, we can get nebulization done with this N-acetylcysteine, which is very, very important. So we can use bronchodilators first. We can nebulize the child with salbutamol first. After that, there will be bronchodilation, and later on we can nebulize with N-acetylcysteine. That N-acetylcysteine breaks the mucus, and then it acts on what N-acetylcysteine is doing, basically it breaks the disulfide bonds between the mucus. Breakage of this disulfide bonds leads to the liquefaction of the mucus, and it comes out. Other agent which is much safer than N-acetylcysteine is 3% normal saline, 3% hypertonic saline. Okay, so this 3% hypertonic saline is much safer than N-acetylcysteine, can be used for longer time. Next comes the role of antibiotics. Okay, this antibiotics, I'm not discussing it in here in details. It is as per the organism which we see, and for when the patient is symptomatically better, IV antibiotics can be tapered, and we need to give antibiotics at least for 2 to 3 weeks for the clearance of organism. I already told the reason why the chronic long-term antibiotics have to be given. Okay, so while sending home, you can add one azithromycin and one other antibiotic, whichever is sensitive. The organism is sensitive. There are various fixed antibiotics. If you are getting Pseudomonas, what antibiotic you, these are present in all the standard textbooks. You can go through the dosage and the name of the antibiotics which are effective against staph, which are effective against Burkholderia sebaceous, which are active against Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and what are the oral antibiotics which we can use. Next is the aerosolized antibiotics. So this aerosolized antibiotics have a major role. Okay, when you are not able to clear, you are getting repeat sputum cultures done again and again, and you are finding that Pseudomonas is again not getting cleared. What antibiotics are being tried of? Tobramycin, okay, tobramycin and colistin. So these colistin and tobramycin nebulization are being tried of, and reports have been suggested they are very effective, tobramycin and colistin. So in these patients, nebulization is giving tobramycin and colistin on and off basis. What is on and off basis? For 1 month, it is you give tobramycin, then you off the antibiotics. You give next again, the third month you can again start the. So 1 month off, 1 month on nebulization with this aerosolized antibiotic. So tobramycin and colistin are being two antibiotics being used under. Next is the bronchodilator and the inhalational steroid therapy. Yeah, bronchodilator nebulization helps, and in patients of known cases of asthma, wheezers, this inhalational steroid therapy also. Next is the very important part is the nutritional management. So what is there in nutritional management? I already told you there is fat malabsorption, there is hypoproteinemia because the digestive enzymes are not coming out of the pancreas and there is no digestion. Okay, there is no digestion of the fat. Next, what we have to do is we have to give extra calories. So if patient is admitted poor oral intake, we can do nasogastric feeding. Patients do various kind of surgical procedures for increasing the calorie intake by supplying diet. They do jejunostomies also. Next is the fat soluble vitamins. Because there is fat malabsorption, there can be deficiency of fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K. What are the doses of vitamin A and vitamin D? It is less than 6 weeks, 6 weeks to 6 months, and more than 6 months. It is for vitamin D, it is 200, 400 and 800, and for it is multiplied by 100, that is 2000, 4000 and 8000 for vitamin A. Okay, next comes the pancreatic enzymes. What is this pancreatic enzymes? Because you are not getting, there is again steatorrhea, there is malabsorption. What we have to do, we get a capsules in which we get no doubt they are very costly. We get pancreatic enzymes on those capsules. So dose is basically you can give 3000 to 10,000 international units that are present per capsule. So you have to see that lipase content should not cross 10,000 units per kg per day. So what we can do is we can open those capsule, we can sprinkle on food in our first bite, and we can give to the patient. Okay, so preferably it is given 3 times before every meal, so that food is better digested. The first bite, patient sprinkles those capsules and they take it. So these are basically the supplementation of the enzymes of pancreas, which pancreas is actually not able to secrete. Gene therapy is basically working at the gene level and correction of the mutation or correction of, you are incorporating the CFTR, which is again under research. Next is the 2 drugs, CFTR modulators, which modulate the function of the CFTR, and it is based on the different mutations. Different drugs act in different mutations. So 2 drugs you have to, at this point of time, you have to remember ivacaftor and lumacaftor. So next, These are the two drugs which also comes as question. You have to remember the names ivacaftor and lumacaftor. So basic treatment. Okay, basic treatment. What we have to remember: chest physiotherapy is respiratory part. Chest physiotherapy is very important. Mucolytic agents, N-acetylcysteine and 3% hypertonic saline. Antibiotic therapy, IV and oral according to the organism, given for 2 to 3 weeks. Aerosolized antibiotics, tobramycin, colistin. Nutritional management, extra calories, you have to give fat soluble vitamins A, D, K. Pancreatic enzymes, okay, capsules come. Gene therapy is under research, CFTR modulators, ivacaftor and lumacaftor. This drugs basically act in various specific types of mutations. It has been seen some modulate the effect of CFTR, some increase the effect of CFTR, defected CFTR. Prognosis is not good. Life expectancy, I told, is very maximum is 30 to 40 years. And earlier it is patient presence and poor is the prognosis. So what is the take home message now? Take home message is again as for questions and what you need to remember while treating patients. So basically it's a autosomal recessive disorder. First, autosomal recessive disorder, and which is having a CFTR protein gene mutation leading to faulty, misfolded, faulty or absence of the CFTR protein. CFTR protein has a function of chloride transport. So this chloride transport is affected. This CFTR protein is constituted of 1480 amino acid. It can comes in multiple answers question, multiple correct answer question. CFTR protein is composed of 1480 type of amino acid. Most common mutation is delta F508 mutation. Okay, delta F508 is the most common mutation. Next, autosomal recessive, I've already told you. Pathogenesis is different in sweat glands and pathogenesis is different in other organs. So there is no duct obstruction in sweat gland. Hypertonic sweat, mother cases, salty sweat. Next is the other organs. There will be duct blockage, thick mucus. So there will be pancreatic exocrine insufficiency, later on endocrine insufficiency, and there can be fat malabsorption, steatorrhea, and failure to thrive, passing greasy stools, and later on diabetes also. In lungs, you can have recurrent pneumonia and bronchiectasis, bronchiolitis. These can be the presentations, and respiratory failure. Next is the vas deferens is affected. So you can get azoospermia, you can get nasal polyps, you can get clubbing. All are these basic important manifestations of the clinical manifestation. Diagnosis, most diagnostic test is the, if it is available, it is the sweat chloride levels. 2 sweat chloride levels have to be done, and it is should be more than 60. Borderline, they are present, and borderline, that is 40 to 60. Again, you have to get it repeated, or nasal potential difference measurements you can do, which is also increased. Okay, next are the mutation studies, and coming on to the, I already told the diagnostic criteria, 1+1 rule. Next is the treatment. So this is the basic important treatment, and this is all we should need to know. I've already discussed all the important points. I already told what are the questions which can come, and I guess this will help you in various examinations and treatment of patients as well. Thank you.